So I'm going to show you the process that I use for creating the animated GIFs that I post from time to time. And what I use is a combination of Photo Mechanic, Lightroom, and Final Cut Pro on my Mac. And the first step in the process is when I'm going through a full take like this game that I shot last night of the Harlem Wizards. If I find something that maybe like good sequence for an animated GIF like this one, what I'll do is make sure that I mark every frame to bring into Lightroom next. So I've got a sequence here of about, I don't know, 50 or 60 frames, and I've got them all marked for my next step of editing. Into my Lightroom, and I have applied my initial color corrections to that. And what I'm going to do is, this one looks like it's going to be good for like a vertical crop, since there's not much on my left and right side of my frames that comes into play. So what I'll do is I'll go to my cropping tool and I'll do like a 16 by 9 crop, and I'll make sure it's turned this way. And what I'll do is I'll basically crop kind of loose so that in the frame just about as much as I think I need to be. And I do like straighten horizon, make sure everything's nice and straight, and that's looking pretty good to me. So I'm going to select that, keep that as my selection. Actually, I'm going to tweak that just a little bit just to fix the horizon there. Okay, so now that's looking all right. I'm actually going to straighten my horizon just a little bit more, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all the color corrections. I bring my exposure up a little bit on this particular sequence, and that's looking pretty good. And when I select my settings to copy, what I'm going to do is include crop and geometry, and then I'm going to go out to the full sequence and paste it to that full sequence. And as I paste it, it's going to include that 16 by 9 vertical crop. You see that just drop in here. Okay, so now that I've got that crop and all of the color and exposure settings pasted to that sequence, what I'm going to do is go ahead and kind of like scan through. I'm just going to scroll through quickly and kind of make sure that every frame, nothing's too close to the edge or anything like that. If it is, I'll have to like recrop it, but this is looking pretty good to me. I've got the player centered in the frame, the rim, so that's looking good. The horizons are looking straight. So my next step is I'm going to output this. Use custom settings to get like a high res, what I would call like a master. In Final Cut Pro, I'm going to need 3200 pixels on the vertical. That's going to be my settings that I'll match. You'll see in a second in Final Cut Pro. So I've got 36 frames of this. That's going to make a nice GIF. And like I said, I'm going to set the long side pixels to 3200 and then export them. And I'll put that, I keep that in the same folder that I've got the full take, and I'll just have one folder with that particular GIF sequence in there. All right. I'm over in Final Cut Pro, and I've got all those individual frames are output into this folder. So I'm going to import them as media into Final Cut Pro. And now that I've got that in there, I'm going to set a new project. And when I do that, I'm going to make it a custom size so that I could specify that I want 1800 pixels wide by 3200 pixels tall. It's maybe larger than the ultimate output that I would want, but I like to do like a higher resolution as a master. And what I want to make sure of is that I match my frame rate. My Sony Alpha 1 does 30 frames per second, so that's what I'm figuring that I have there in those files that I output. So I'm going to select 30p as my frame rate. That'll kind of match 1 second if I do my frame settings the same. So now I've got a blank project, and you can see there I have all those frames. So I'm going to get them on my timeline. So after I get them on my timeline, I need to change the duration. So I'm going to go ahead and change the duration to something like 5, and then I'm going to just hit play and see what that looks like. Usually that gives me a pretty good result. That's actually not looking too bad. Let me show you that full screen. Yeah, that's looking pretty good to me. So what I'm going to do next now, here's a step that if you're like really a perfectionist, and I like to see, I like to do this to make sure that I lose any of that kind of like jumpiness. What I could do is output this as like a master file. So I'm going to output this as like a master file with that same resolution, 3200 pixels tall by 1800 pixels wide. Give that a second to output. So now what I want to do is I want to take out my individual frames, and this is just an extra step that I like to do because it makes everything look smooth. So I'll do another import, and I'll find that video file that I just output, and I'll put that on my timeline. Just get that selected here, add that into my timeline, and what I'll do with that is I'll do like a little bit of stabilization. So I'll make sure that that's selected, my playhead there, and actually fix stabilization. You could do rolling shutter too. Sometimes that adds a little bit of smoothness. But what I'm going to end up with is like a super smooth, stabilized version of this. So let me show you one playthrough of that stabilized version. Just finishing processing there. So let me go full screen here for you. So see, that's looking nice and stabilized now. So then, like, what I do is output the final version of this. What I'll do is I'll copy that so that it actually plays a couple times on my timeline, maybe 3, maybe 5. And then I'll output that to a file, and then I'll have a finished file that I can upload to, in this case, I'll post to Instagram Reel with that 16:9 resolution ratio. Okay, so here's that final stabilized version that I'll end up posting.